So let's dive in a little more into those four, right? So you've got people, you got process, you got technology, and I really want to explore culture because that's near and dear to me, my heart, and certainly the work we do with leaders. So give us a sense of how should we be thinking about those four integrated elements?
Well, I believed, and listen, I think you might know better than I, right? I believed that people and culture needed to be distinct.
Yeah.
Because people individually is not the totality of the culture.
Correct.
The culture may be, do you have psychological safety, right? Do you feel you can raise your hand and say, hey, I think these processes are broken, and I feel like if I bring it forward, someone will listen to me and action it. That's very different than at the people individual contributor level, maybe how we collaborate, how we work, how we're organized, how we trained, et cetera. So for me, something very simple for, let's just pick culture again, and say, look, there's a stat from the World Economic Forum that says, by 2025, that some 50% of people will have to be reskilled. So you could say that's a people issue, but if the culture doesn't believe in investing in talent because they feel like, oh, wait a second, if we invest in this talent and we get them skilled up and certified, and now they're like, really performing at a high level and a really top contributor, and they leave, like, how do we recoup that money that we've now trained them and they walked out the door? Right. The opposite side of that is, okay, let's just say you say, okay, we're not going to do that because we don't want that talent to walk out the door after we've trained them and spent X amount of dollars on them.
Yeah.
But then what if you don't invest in them and they stay? Then do they know how to use GPT? Do they know how to use AI? Do they know how to run an effective meeting? Do they know how to overcome objections? Do they even know how to be a manager? Like lots of high performers are rewarded by becoming a manager and then moving up in the organization, but they don't actually know how to manage or lead or run a team. I mean, so that is a cultural, in my mind, right? A cultural phenomena. So do you invest in talent? So some of the examples I give in the book is like Unilever, right? Really investing in leadership and developing leadership, and then realize how performance of those leaders really improved, as well as their teams. And then they're like, well, hold on a second, like, let's not stop there. Let's go to managers. And then, hey, this is doing really well. Like, let's not stop there. Let's go to individual contributors, because if people want to invest in their career and we can give them the on-ramp, right, to do that, and then they're willing to now stay because they feel like, okay, I'm working somewhere that cares about me, culture, people I'm invested in, I feel like I'm listened to, all the things that bring satisfaction to the day-to-day job, right? We spend a third of our lives at work. Please find some joy, like, at the end of the day. So that's why I sort of differentiated them. And again, not everything culture, not everything people, but at that intersection, right, where they can be better because of it when they are doing something for the customer.
Yeah. And as you shared that story and that focus on leadership development, I started thinking and where our ideas maybe intersect is I'm curious about if you've put any thought or anything in your research that really kind of got to this idea of what about the experience of leaders? Because my sense when we use the term, employee experience, we're thinking about, frontline leader or frontline employees, those who are closest to the customers of any company. And yet their experience is often mediated by the quality of their manager, supervisor, team lead and whatnot. Was there anything in that work that gave you any insights about that role of the leadership experience and how that affects the employee experience, which ultimately then affects the customer experience?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what I was just saying. Look, I'm just going to use my own personal experience here. I was an individual quota carrying sales rep, and I was highly productive and I always hit quota. And so the natural progression then is you become a team lead, and then a manager, and then a director, and then a VP, and then I moved up, right? And then I became an SVP, senior vice president, and then an EVP, sitting at the C-suite. But that didn't mean at each level that I got, additional training and coaching and mentoring so that I knew what that even meant of
Right.
My line of sight, I'm now thinking out years instead of days or quarters. Like it was jarring as I got more and more responsibility, because I felt a little overwhelmed, and I had to kind of figure out how to do it on my own, as an example. Hopefully things are different now, like fingers crossed. And I often joke that if I could go back in time, I'd hope I'd be a better leader now than I was then, because I know more now, right? So,
Right.
I mean, that's sort of the goal. But when I was trying,
just a quick answer.
yes,
My sense is with the leaders we work with, not much better than your
I mean,
experience.
well, I mean, I would hope so, because now I have, like, I was an individual contributor who burnt out.
Yeah.
So then when I became a manager and a leader, I led that same way. So I think I was just
Right.
burning out my teams, right? And so
Right.
like something that simple yet really impactful. Like, no, we need to find ways to have a little bit more balance, and then really moving obstacles out of the way. You can say, but what does that really mean? And how do you uncover what those obstacles are? I know more now how to do that. So,
Right.
Ask better questions, listen.
Yeah.
And not only ask questions of those at your direct level, right, but individual contributors. And so that's what I mean by saying that I hope I would be better because of the things that I'm now I'm aware of, right?
Yeah.
Would I be 100 times better? I don't know. I mean, it's degrees of better, but I hope that I would be. But in this example, I could not get the senior leadership team to help me get those obstacles out of the way for my people. I was running a call center at the time. It was about 125 people in the call center. So it was a good sized call center. And, this was in early 2000s. So we didn't necessarily always have 24/7. We didn't have chat. We didn't have a lot of the things, automation and AI and bots answering for us. We didn't have a lot of that. So, we weren't running 24/7. And so it was a different time, but I couldn't get them to help me move some of these obstacles out of the way. And so I had one of the very first business books I ever read was In Search of Excellence, which was written by Mr. Tom Peters, who happened to write the foreword for my latest book, The Experience Mindset. So it was a full circle moment for me. But he has a great concept in that book called Management by Wandering Around, right? Like, get out of your office and go wander around amongst employees, people. Doesn't need to be frontline, doesn't need to be individual contributors, right? But just people, right? Get out of your office. So I asked my CEO, could I ask the senior team to go sit in the call center one day next week for a minimum of 2 hours? Like, I need them to listen in, right? So just shadow different people in the call center. So some were taking orders, some were doing technical support, some were doing billing support, etc. And lo and behold, by the end of the week, everything I had been asking for was approved. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not like all of a sudden my idea became brilliant and right. It was that there was just no line of sight.
Right.
There was just no, it didn't matter how I emotionally tried to convince them until they saw it, felt it, experienced it.
Yeah.
You just couldn't get that connection. And so, that's has a huge piece of the experience of a leader, right?
Yeah.
That the further you get away from individual contributors, unfortunately, the further you get away from the customer, the further you get away almost from the business. And if you don't believe that statement, Undercover Boss in the US anyway, is a great example, a masterclass in how you've gotten disconnected from what's happening, right? Because those C-level executives show up and do almost what I just said, right? And go work amongst the people and do the jobs that they're paid to do. And all of a sudden, right, they're like, my gosh, we have to train, we have to fix the IT, we have to hire the right talent. Like, we can't do this, we can't do that. We need to, this is why our healthcare costs are high. We need, and you're like, my goodness, what have you been doing for the last 5 years as CEO that you don't know this is happening in your business? And so that leadership experience is sometimes very walled off, right? It's run from in a spreadsheet. It's run from a PowerPoint presentation. And trust me when I tell you, your value statement, your slides, your Excel spreadsheet will not show up and help a customer when there's a problem. It's your people.
Yeah. Well, what you did there that was brilliant is you gave them each an opportunity to experience the employee experience of working in a call center directly. Right. And so, that becomes a critical part of what's needed here.